Okay, we're continuing with the book here, Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes. We're doing the quotes of Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great American philosopher of the 1800s. His next line here is, you become what you think about. And you've heard Earl Nightingale say that too, and there's a lot of truth in that. So you want to focus your energy on something good. You only got so much time in life. You got 1/3 of your life you spend it asleep, another 1/3 of your life you probably spend it, doing some type of job often that you're not that excited about to make money for yourself, for your family. That other third is approximately the time you have to do whatever it is you want to focus on. So whatever you're focusing on, that's what expands, that's what you develop. So part of life is just figuring out how to avoid distractions so you can put more time into your focus. A man in debt is so far a slave. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. Speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, although it may contradict everything you said today. Well, if you learn new information, it's reasonable to change your mind. Liberty is an accurate index in men and nations of general progress. A little praise goes a great way. Yeah, if you got something to compliment somebody on, say something nice to them. Most people don't get enough compliments. It's good to cheer them up. One thing I'd say is, you got to be careful who you talk to, because a lot of people, it's like I've noticed, like about this vegan diet stuff, a lot of people are really fat, and if you mention it to them, you don't want to give too much unsolicited advice because you hurt their feelings, and they think you're calling them fat, and then they give you an awkward look or they avoid you. So you got to use your judgment on that. But in general, praising somebody who's trying to learn something helps them along their way, gives them hope and confidence. There are men too superior to be seen except by the few, as there are notes too high for the scale of most ears. Yeah, eagles don't flock, okay? The more advanced you get in a subject, the fewer the people who can really understand what you're talking about when you get into the advanced stuff. The book, the college, the school of art, the institution of any kind, they stop with the past. This is good, they say. Let us hold down by this. They pin me down. They look backward, not forward, but genius looks forward. Man hopes, genius creates. So yeah, that's true that, the medical schools, they're not interested in knowledge. They're interested in obedience and producing, drug dealers of the future. So they don't want advanced, up-to-date information. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Yeah, and that's kind of like, Beethoven had said, you learning to trust yourself is the key to becoming a great artist. And Mozart said the same thing pretty much. He said, any artist who's really good knows what he needs to do better than anyone else could tell him. Yeah, that's true. You listen for advice, you look for inspiration and ideas, but in the end, you got to trust yourself. That's why it's good to feel you have a sense of destiny. And, to go for it when you sense the opportunity. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson, to believe your own thought, to believe what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men. That is genius. And that's in the sense that a lot of times there's peer pressure not to say what you feel in your gut to be the truth. And if you get over that peer pressure and just say it, you find that, the audience usually really likes it. And that's the best part of your speech, your lecture, whatever, because they sense you told the truth and they recognize that it was awkward. They could feel it. Okay. Emerson continues, in every work of genius we recognize our own thoughts. I just did that one. Great works of art have no more affecting lesion than this. They teach us to abide by our spontaneous impression with good-humored inflexibility, the most when the whole cry of voices is on the other side. Yeah, you can feel the tension build up when you're releasing a new controversial idea, but that's usually the most useful thing you're going to say on that topic. That's how you make progress. Every new idea is controversial at first, every new good idea. Okay, Emerson continues. Talent says things which it has heard but once. Genius says things that it has never heard. Yeah, I think the best definition of genius I've ever come across is the one by D.K. Simonton, who researches geniuses. He says, a genius is someone who transforms a field. Okay? McDougall transformed nutrition. Before McDougall, everybody thought autoimmune disease was incurable, and nobody knew it was the best diet. He made it clear it's a starch-based diet, okay? Walter Kempner transformed dietary therapy and nutrition. He showed the chronic diseases can be cured with nutrition, dietary therapy. Dennis Burkitt, he transformed nutrition and showing that dietary fiber was the key to the abdominal pressure syndrome. So those are giant things, you know. Caldwell-Esselstyn proved that coronary artery disease could be reversed with low-fat vegan diet. Okay. T. Colin Campbell proved that animal protein increases your risk of cancer. All right, Ralph Waldo Emerson continues. Knowing is the measure of man by how much we know, so we are. The value of a principle is the number of things it can explain. It's like a value of a scientific theory. If you cannot be as free as you can. And that certainly applies to the modern world. You can't be free to do everything. And like as a doctor, there's certain things I can't tell you. You know, I can't talk to you about certain things like, let's say, about chemo. There's certain problems with chemo I really, you know, can't go into. There's other things. I tell you as much as I possibly can, but that's just how it is, okay? Whoso would be a man? You know, look at it. If you make a video about Gerson, that video will get taken down, okay? They don't want competition in that industry. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. For nonconformity, the world whips you with its displeasure. Yeah, I've had that experience too. If you go beyond, you know, being a drug dealer and you try to be a healer, that is not appreciated or respected in the conventional medical community. Ralph Waldo Emerson continues on writing. Talent alone cannot make a writer. There must be a man behind the book, a personality which by birth and quality is pledged to the doctrines there set forth, and which exists to see and state things so, and not otherwise. Yeah, a real legitimate great expert, that's how they are. And they're, you know, pretty unique in their personality because their whole life and experience is behind it. So if you want to be really good at something, you should be like that. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. That's a good one to say when people misunderstand you. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. With consistency, a great soul simply has nothing to do. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of its members. The virtue in most request is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. Yeah, in Western society, the last 50 years has totally been feminized and trying to push out noble masculinity. But greatness, it comes primarily from noble masculinity. And if you push out noble masculinity, you end up with something very suboptimal to what you could get with noble masculinity. It's just a fact. Noble masculinity creates excellence, and it protects the weak and enables them to flourish, to prosper, to develop. Okay, you have to have that. There's no way around that. If you don't have that, everything goes to crap. It's just a fact. Look at the collapse of Western society in the last 50 years. It's dramatic. I remember how heroic things were back in the 1970s and 80s, and now how degenerate they are. You know, you turn on the TV back in the 1970s and 1980s, you saw all these macho, heroic men. Father Knows Best, Chuck Connors. You saw, you know, the Rocky movies, the Rambo movies, all the funny comedies in the 1980s. You could talk freely and have a laugh, okay? All of that's been shut down. The great movies like Amadeus. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. I like the silent church before the service begins better than any preaching. A friend is a person with whom I may be sincere. Yeah, somebody who can handle nuance. They're not going to get pissed off at you if you contradict them or say something that they didn't know. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson. When Shakespeare is charged with debts to his authors, Landor replies, yet he was more original than his originals. He breathed upon dead bodies and brought them to life. If we encounter a man of rare intellect, we should ask him what books he reads. Meek young men grow up in libraries believing it is their duty to accept the views of Cicero and Locke and Bacon that they had given, forgetful that Cicero, Locke, and Bacon were only young men in libraries when they wrote these books. When the Spirit chooses you for its scribe to publish some commandment, it makes you odious to men and men odious to you, and you shall accept that loathsomeness with joy. Yeah, you have to go off into the wilderness, into the desert for a while, so to speak, to acquire more knowledge and then come back and share it with the masses. And you have to accept a lot of loneliness and a lot of being misunderstood if you're ever going to do anything great. To go beyond what is conventional, you have to go to areas that are misunderstood and thus be misunderstood. But that's what it takes to transform a field if you want to try to do that. Okay, Emerson continues. The good writer seems to be writing about himself, but has his eyes always on that thread of the universe which runs through himself and all things. Talent working with joy in the cause of universal truth lifts the possessor to new power. Okay, yeah, when you're totally focused on something and doing it the best you can, the other things, like Goethe said, if for a man to learn a complex topic, he must love it. So when you like something and you try to really do the best you can with it, good things happen. Okay, put the argument into a concrete shape and into an image in some hard phrase, which they can see and handle and carry home with them, and the cause is half won. Well, that, quote, how do you go with that? But basically, pictures are better than words. So have a metaphor they can picture or an actual drawing or painting, if you can. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. That's part 2 of Ralph Waldo Emerson quotes.